Tolkien's legendarium is filled with brave heroes and fell deeds in its over 60 millennia history, divided into 4 ages. No other age produced as many myths as the First Age, a time suffused with legend that shaped much of the lands, peoples, and fates of Middle-earth. The foundation of elf kingdoms, the rise of the human houses of the Edain, Feanor's Oath, the siege of Angband, and the Dagor Bragolach. But perhaps the most miraculous feat of the First Age rises from its sheer improbability, a tale of love and loyalty, of betrayal and tragedy, and the union of the houses of elves and men. This tale, preserved in one of the longest epics ever crafted by elves that has since faded to the edge of memory, tells the story of Beren, son of Barahir, of Luthien to Nuviel, and the quest for the Silmaril, the Lay of Luthien. Though the fates of Beren, Luthien, and all others tied in their quest culminated in the 5th century of the Years of the Sun, their weavings were first spun centuries prior, in the waning days of the Years of the Trees, when Feanor, genius smith and greatest of the elf lords, crafted the Silmarils. 3 glittering gems of immense beauty forged in a manner known only to Feanor, the Silmarils were unsurpassed works of elven smithing. The Lay of Luthien describes them as the thrice enchanted globes of light that shine until the final night. Blessed by the Valar and filled with the light of Valinor's trees, the gems were so pristine it's told that no evil thing could suffer to hold them. We're told that even in the darkness of the deepest treasury, the Silmarils of their own radiance shone like the stars of Varda, and yet, as were they indeed living things, they rejoiced in light and received it and gave it back in hues more marvelous than before. But the Silmaril's luster was darkened by dooms and oaths of powerful forces that, moved by desire, led ultimately to destruction. Melkor, first of the Valar and mightiest of the Ainur, stole Feanor's jewels and fled from Aman to Middle-earth. His theft forever brandished him Morgoth, dark enemy, and stirred Feanor to proclaim his infamous oath which forever bound him and his house to the Silmarils, for good or ill. The oath of Feanor, and subsequent doom foretold by Mondos, the Vala of prophecy, produced woe for the elves. The exile of the Noldor from Valinor, the multiple kinslayings, the deaths of princes and kings in countless thousands, were all wrapped in this oath and curse. But so great were the Silmarils' beauty that many tempted fate and sought to retrieve them. Morgoth, protected behind the dark walls of his fortress Angband, brooded for centuries with an iron crown studded by the 3 jewels upon his head. Though Feanor and the elves assaulted Morgoth and won several victories against his forces, they couldn't break Angband's walls and were forced to invest in a lengthy siege, one that ended in tragedy. In 455 First Age, roughly 400 years into the siege of Angband, Morgoth obliterated the League of Noldor and Edain, the first great houses of men, in the Dagor Bragolach, the Battle of Sudden Flame. Many elf lords and leaders of men perished. The lands of northern Beleriand were ravaged, including the plain of Ard Gallon, and the hinterlands of Dorthonion. The pass of Sirion was taken, and Morgoth's forces were free to attack the other kingdoms at will. But Barahir, leader of the men of House Beor, refused to flee from his home in Dorthonion, nor did he submit to Morgoth. The warrior earned renown for his fearsome skill in the Dagor Bragolach and his selfless defense of the elf lord Finrod Felagund, for which he was given one of Finrod's rings, and it would be known as the Ring of Barahir. We're told in the Ruin of Beleriand that now Morgoth's power overshadowed the Northlands, but Barahir would not flee from Dorthonion and remained contesting the land foot by foot with his enemies. And later, in Beren and Lúthien, it has been told that Barahir would not forsake Dorthonion, and there Morgoth pursued him to the death, until at last there remained to him only 12 companions. A just and noble soul, Barahir was inspired as much by duty as a personal hatred against Morgoth for lying to waste his home and slaying his brothers and sisters. But one of Barahir's men was taken by the enemy, tortured, and turned to reveal the company's camp. They were killed to a man save one. Beren, the son of Barahir, who escaped Morgoth's agents and vowed cold vengeance against his father's killers. The young man hunted the orc host and recovered the ring of Barahir. Like his father, Beren was skilled in combat and wise in the arts of woodsman. His time as an outlaw beside Barahir's retinue taught Beren valuable lessons on nature, tracking, hunting, frustrating Morgoth's plans, and evading the Dark Lord's ire. He brimmed with self-assuredness, and following Barahir's death, took it upon himself to single-handedly continue the rebellion in Dorthonion against Morgoth. We're told, thereafter, for 4 years more, Beren wandered still upon Dorthonion, a solitary outlaw, but he became the friends of birds and beasts, and they aided him, and did not betray him. And from that time forth he ate no flesh, nor slew any living thing that was not in the service of Morgoth. He did not fear death, but only captivity. This was a man who cherished his freedom and fought valiantly to preserve it, a man assisted by the nature that surrounded and shielded him. But as his feats grew and his legend spread, Morgoth was provoked to action and issued a bounty on Beren's head so high he was forced to flee his ancestral land. Beren made south for the forested, isolated realm of Doriath, ruled by the elf king Thingol Greymantle, alongside his wife, Queen Melian, the Maya, a being most beautiful, wise, and skilled in enchantment. Her magic had long ago cast a protective border around Doriath, called the Girdle of Melian, that kept it hidden from the enemy and supported the realm's beauty. As such, King Thingol and his elves seldom ventured beyond Doriath. Indifference to the struggles of their Noldoran cousins colored them. But the route from Dorthonion to Doriath was fraught with such nightmares and dangers that no one, whether elf or man, was spirited enough to attempt it. Beren's budding myth was further bolstered by his solo crossing of this path, which speaks to the man's undaunted resolve. Spider spawns of Terrible and Goliant were said to snare all things, even light, within their webs. Foul magic battered Melian's girdle and mixed with pure enchantments to dangerous effect. Yet Beren persevered and, exhausted, made his way to a tranquil glade. Here is where he heard the mesmerizing voice and saw the pristine grace of one who forever changed his life. Thingol and Melian had one daughter, Luthien, deemed to have been the fairest maiden of all the children of Iluvatar, whose beauty was only once equaled millennia later in Arwen Undomiel of the Third Age. A spirit of the earth, Luthien frequently walked through her father's forests, singing in a voice that bound all who heard it as if in a spell. The daughter of Thingol and Melian's very aura was that of repose and grace. During one of her treks, the young Beren happened upon Luthien, and her music banished the weariness that had filled him since leaving Dorthonion. Enraptured by the music, he scoured the forest for its source. The Silmarillion tells us of their chance meeting. Then the spell of silence fell from Beren, and he called to her, crying to Nuviel, and the woods echoed the name. Then she halted in wonder and fled no more, and Beren came to her. But as she looked on him, doom fell upon her, and she loved him. Fate and feelings brought Beren and Luthien together, an unlikely pair, as the two kindreds of elves and men had to this point never merged. But fate, too, soon tested the strength of their bond, and though Beren had already demonstrated his skill in years as an outlaw of Dorthonion, and in the crossing to Doriath, a new quest pushed him beyond human limits and into the realm of myth. Elu Thingol, king of Doriath, learned of his daughter's fancy in a mortal, and outraged had Beren brought before his throne. Thingol cherished Luthien above all treasures he possessed, and against all evils he opposed. The king had kept her from marriage to many elf princes, who offered strong alliances with their union. For his daughter to be smitten with a man exiled with no house and no land, was unthinkable. Thingol cared not for the affection Beren and Luthien shared. He admonished the man and demanded he give up this hopeless suit. But then Beren spoke. "My fate, O king, led me hither, through peril such as few even of the elves would dare. And here I have found what I sought not indeed, but finding I would possess forever. For it is above all gold and silver, and beyond all jewels. Neither rock nor steel, nor the fires of Morgoth, nor all the powers of the elf kingdoms shall keep me from the treasure I desire. For Luthien, your daughter, is the fairest of all the children of the world." Beren's words were strong and true, and Thingol felt the tendrils of fate binding this man to his house even as they spoke. But the king of Doriath wouldn't give his daughter's hand for nothing, and he devised a plan that would either rid him of Beren or else win him a prize beyond imagination. The man before him was brave but reckless, and blinded by love he would agree to almost anything. So the king said, "See now, I too desire a treasure that is withheld, yet I hear you say that bonds such as these do not daunt you. Go your way, therefore, bring to me in your hand a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown, and then, if she will, Luthien may set her hand in yours. Then you shall have my jewel." Queen Melian warned Thingol against such counsel. By simply speaking of the Silmarils, he had invoked the oath of Feanor, and the curse now drew Doriath into the fate of a mightier realm. If Beren succeeded, Thingol doomed himself to the curse. If Beren failed, he doomed Luthien to an eternity of despair. But the words had left his mouth, and Beren agreed. Thus began the quest for the Silmaril, and one man's effort to attempt what thousands before him had failed and enter Morgoth's lair. Beren's quest first brought him west, to the lands of Nargothrond, ruled by Finrod Felagund, the elf lord whom Beren's father protected during the Battle of Sudden Flame, and who gifted him the Ring of Barahir. The ring opened access to Nargothrond's reaches, and Beren sought friendly counsel from Felagund. But the court of Finrod had for some time entertained two guests, two princes and sons of Feanor, Celegorm and Curufin. The brothers had aided Finrod's house during the Dagor Bragolach and retreated alongside them south of the Pass of Sirion. Celegorm and Curufin led a large contingent of elves, and though they extended every decency to Felagund, had taken power and influence from the king. Felagund was beholden to his kinsmen by oath, but so too was he bound to the house of Barahir. And if word of Beren's desire for a Silmaril reached the sons of Feanor, ruin would fall on Nargothrond. This is highlighted in his advice to Beren. It's plain that Thingol desires your death, but it seems this doom goes beyond his purpose, and that the oath of Feanor is again at work. For the Silmarils are cursed with an oath of hatred, and he that even names them in desire moves a great power from slumber. Word did reach them, however, and straight from the king's lips, as Felagund told all in his halls of Beren's quest and of the aid the king was bound to give. But the brothers' power outgrew Finrod's own, and their words moved the elves of Nargothrond to turn from their king. The curse of Feanor went beyond simply isolating Finrod, whom few followed in his journey with Beren, but to twist the minds of Celegorm and Curufin to malice. As princes of high standing and noble blood, they had strong claims to the throne of Nargothrond, and hoped this quest would result in Felagund's death, so that they might usurp his crown. We hear the depths of Feanor's curse and the lengths his family would go to reclaim their right in these words spoken. Be he friend or foe, whether demon of Morgoth or elf, or child of men, or any other living thing in Arda, neither law, nor love, nor league of hell, nor might of the Valar, nor any power of wizardry shall defend him from the pursuing hate of Feanor's sons, if he take or find a Silmaril and keep it. For the Silmarils we alone claim until the world ends. So Beren and Finrod took to their quest, joined only by 10 guardsmen, which brought them north through the pass of Sirion that opened into the plains of Ard Galan and Angband beyond. The pass had once been an elf bastion, where upon an island in the river, Finrod had built the fortress Minas Tirith, but Morgoth's victories took this land, which he bequeathed to his most ardent lieutenant, the Maya Sauron. Tolin Garoth it was named, the Isle of the Werewolves. Dressed as orcs and shrouded by Finrod's magic, the company attempted to pass the fortress, but Sauron saw through their disguise and dragged Beren, Finrod, and the others before him. The king of Nargothrond challenged Sauron to a duel of sorcery and song, but was outmatched. The Lay of Luthien tells us, "The wind wails, the wolf howls, The ravens fell, the ice mutters in the mouths of the sea. The captives sad and Angband mourn. The rumbles, the fires burn, and Finrod fell before the throne. Beren's party suffered torture in Sauron's dungeons. One by one they succumbed, but so strong was their resolve that none betrayed their names or their purpose. Soon only Beren and Felagund remained, and the quest for the Silmaril seemed spent. While the pair languished, Luthien had learned what evil befell her love, and sensing that no other force on earth would rescue him, resolved to do so herself. She used enchantments to escape house arrest placed on her by Thingol, and soon happened upon a massive hunting dog, a creature of myth named Huan. Huan was the wolfhound of Celegorm, born in Valinor and gifted to the elf by Orome the hunter. Large, mighty, and fearsome, Huan accompanied Celegorm and Curufin on their frequent patrols on the borderlands against Morgoth's forces, and fate crossed their path with Lúthien's own. Celegorm was instantly enamored with her, but the pair brought Luthien to Nargothrond in good faith to hear her tale. Once they learned her love for Beren and his doom alongside Felagund in Sauron's prison, dark thoughts clouded the brothers' minds, and the oath of Feanor continued its evil. We're told, for now, believing that Beren and Felagund were prisoners beyond hope of aid, they purposed to let the king perish and to keep Luthien and force Thingol to give her hand to Celegorm. Thus they would advance their power and become the mightiest of the princes of the Noldor. But Huan, being a great wolfhound of Valinor, could understand the elves and even speak. The dog's pure heart couldn't suffer his master's sudden spite when contrasted with Lúthien's open character and the love she held for Beren. Huan aided her escape from Nargothrond, and the two rode to Tol in Garoth. As they raced north, Sauron's captives approached death. As one of the Maya's werewolves prepared to feast on Beren, Felagund summoned all his strength, broke from his bonds, and sacrificed himself to kill the werewolf. The purity of Beren's plight and the man's tenacity moved Finrod, and his dying act preserved the quest. The light of Nargothrond faded, but Finrod bought Beren time, and Luthien arrived shortly. She sang a beautiful and powerful song that shook Sauron's fortress and drew his attention. Werewolf after werewolf he sent to capture Luthien, but mighty Huan slew them all, including Draugluin, the dread sire of Angband's werewolves. Finally, Sauron himself approached, transformed into the figure of a werewolf, the likes of which had never been seen. There befell the battle of Huan and Wolf Sauron, and the howls and bang echoed in the hills, and the watchers on the walls of Ered Wethrin across the valley heard it afar and were dismayed. But Huan and Luthien won the field, and Sauron, a Maya not easily defeated, was forced to flee to his master in Angband. Luthien freed the island's prisoners. Her presence and love brought Beren from the precipice of death, and the pair were reunited. The quest continued. While Beren recovered, elves released by Luthien returned to Nargothrond and spread word of her miraculous deeds. The elves berated Curufin and Celegorm. We are told they lamented bitterly the fall of Felagund, their king, saying that a maiden had dared that which the sons of Feanor had not dared to do. But many perceived that it was treachery rather than fear that had guided Celegorm and Curufin. The siblings were forced from Nargothrond and rode north and east towards Maedhros, their brother. Doom guided their route, and coincidence brought them across Beren and Lúthien's camp. Incensed by Beren's quest, which had cost them considerable influence, Celegorm and Curufin rode down the pair with violence in their minds. Here again, Beren displayed his legendary skill, springing upon Celegorm's speeding horse and knocking the elf from the saddle. The leap of Beren has since passed through the lore of both elves and men. Huan, who had already aided Luthien, again came to her rescue and turned against his master. The sons of Feanor were defeated, and Huan joined Beren and Luthien on their quest for the Silmaril. But Beren was wounded by an arrow and required time to heal. The man had faced Sauron, orcs, Noldoran princes, and death multiple times, but still, Beren was no closer to his goal. He cursed his oath for putting Luthien in danger, and an internal struggle was fought, over whether to give up on it entirely. Beren finally decided to sneak away from Luthien and continue alone in hopes that she might not follow. But borne on the back of Huan, she caught the man up, and the trio were bound by a promise that they would remain together in success and failure until they had a Silmaril in their grasp. From this moment, Beren no longer tried to dissuade his love from the quest. Luthien used her enchantments to disguise the three in dreadful garments, and they sped across Taur nu Furin, the ruins of Dorthonion, unrestricted. Through dust and dark perils, they finally came to the gate of Angband, but were dismayed by what guarded Morgoth's lair. A monstrous wolf, a spawn of Draugluin, but more graven and more powerful, that no elf or man had heard of even in rumor. Morgoth knew of Huan's doom spoken long ago, that the hound would die in battle with the greatest among wolves, and so created the beast that watched the gate. There, the fire and anguish of hell entered into him, and he became filled with a devouring spirit, tormented, terrible, and strong. Karkaroth, the Red Maw, he is named in the tales of those days, and on Faglir, the jaws of thirst, and Morgoth set him to lie unsleeping before the doors of Angband. Now, the prowess of Luthien was displayed, for as Karkaroth grew suspicious of the company, he rushed into an attack. But Tenuviel cast off her dark cloak, and in radiance commanded through sorcery the wolf to sleep, and he was immediately felled. With the gate opened before them, all that remained was to confront Morgoth himself. And they together wrought the greatest deed that has been dared by elves or men, for they came to the seat of Morgoth in his nethermost hall, that was upheld by horror, lit by fire, and filled with weapons of death and torment. Beren remained disguised, but Luthien approached the Ainu as herself, beautiful, terrible, undaunted. She claimed a desire to offer her service as a minstrel for Morgoth's court, to write songs lauding his victory as an excuse to sing. She vanished from sight and filled Morgoth's chamber with a song of unsurpassed loveliness, woven with enchantments that blinded and lulled those in the hall into the oblivion of deep slumber. Not even Morgoth, Melkor, the first of the Ainur, was immune to Luthien's song, strengthened by her love for Beren. And suddenly he fell, as a hill sliding in avalanche, and hurled like thunder from his throne, lay prone upon the floors of hell. The iron crown rolled, echoing from his head. All things were still. In this moment, the pair did the impossible. Beren used a knife he had taken from Celegorm and Carufin to release one of the Silmarils that glimmered from Morgoth's crown. But ambition caught him, and the man attempted what was beyond his oath. When he tried to free another of the jewels, the blade snapped and stirred Morgoth from sleep. In terror they fled, but Karkaroth, who had shaken off Luthien's spell, barred the couple at Angband's gate. Luthien was weakened from her song, so Beren approached the giant beast with the Silmaril held aloft, hoping that the jewel's luster and purity would dismay the wolf, and it did, but only for a moment. A great hunger consumed Karkaroth upon seeing the jewel, and his massive jaws snapped shut around it, tearing off Beren's hand as it held the stone, and from then on he was named Erkameon, the One-Handed. Again, the Silmarils are clean and innocent. They are anathema to any creature bent by evil, and burn those that touch them. Karkaroth's insides turned to flame, pain racked the wolf's body, and his mind was in a frenzy held to neither logic nor command, only a deep thirst to quench the Silmaril's heat. His howls echoed across the land as he rampaged unpredictably, ultimately going south, and we are told that of all the terrors that came ever into Beleriand ere Angband's fall, the madness of Karkaroth was the most dreadful, for the power of the Silmaril was hidden within him. Beren once more skirted death, and Luthien lay exhausted. Karkaroth's yelps awakened Morgoth's host, and the Ainu rose to wrath over the theft of a Silmaril. This should have ended the lovers' lives, but just as hope slipped, Thorondor, king of the Eagles, descended with his vassals to bear the man and elf to safety. Beren, renowned as a woodsman and friend of nature, was known to all creatures, and word of his toils spread quickly through beak, mouth, hoof and claw, that he was in grave peril, and it was with such news Thorondor searched. The eagles set Beren and Lúthien down on the borders of Doriath, and they returned to Menegroth to confront Elu Thingol. The king had darkened of late, hearing rumors of Felagund's death, Beren's possible death, and his daughter's imprisonment by the sons of Feanor. But all such thoughts left him when Lúthien and Beren stood before him. Thingol was amazed at Beren, that a man could succeed against even half the trials he was said to have faced. But the king's demand remained, and he held no love for Beren yet. Tension filled the air. The quest was complete, but only in part. How would the king take the news of a masterless Silmaril hidden within a werewolf's body? Their conversation was as follows. I return according to my word. I am come now to claim my own. And Thingol answered, What of your quest and of your vow? But Beren said, It is fulfilled. Even now a Silmaril is held in my hand. Then Thingol said, Show it to me. And Beren put forth his left hand, but it was empty. Then he held up his right arm, and from that hour he named himself Camnost, the empty-handed. Thingol's bearing instantly softened as Beren and Lúthien told of their quest. Here was a man, a mortal unlike any other, and counted among the great in Arda, who was truly worthy of Thingol's daughter. And the king felt that nothing could withstand the love shared between the two. So it was that Thingol embraced Beren, but even though the quest had been fulfilled, there still remained a Silmaril trapped in Karkaroth's belly. The werewolf rampaged throughout Dorthonion and into Doriath. We are told that nothing hindered him, and the might of Melian upon the borders of the land stayed him not, for fate drove him, and the power of the Silmaril that he bore to his torment. And as Karkaroth drew ever nearer to Menegroth, Doriath prepared the hunting of the wolf, the most perilous of all pursuits. Thingol, Beren, Huan, and others in company tracked the vile wolf to the bank of the Escalduin, and near the river had a fate-foretold fight. As Karkaroth moved to strike Thingol, Beren put himself between and was mortally wounded. Huan, the wolfhound, sprang into action, and his battle with the werewolf would be told for ages. Huan killed Karkaroth, but his doom was written long ago to perish by the maw of the greatest wolf, and so it was that the loyal hound, companion of the quest, stumbled to the dying Beren and breathed his last. With the Silmaril retrieved from Karkaroth's gut, the company tried to revive Beren, but he bade Thingol receive it, and said, Now is the quest achieved, and my doom full wrought. And he spoke no more. Though the quest for the Silmaril ended, more is told of Beren and Tenuviel in the Lay of Lúthien, released from bondage. Upon his funeral bier, Lúthien kissed Beren and requested that her love await her beyond the western sea, in Valinor and the halls of Mandos. This is a powerful bidding. The halls of Mandos are where the immortal spirits of the elves lingered, awaiting rebirth to join their companions at the foretold time. Mortality, permanent death, also called the gift of Ilúvatar, was reserved for the race of men. Few things could preserve human spirits in Arda, and even then not forever. But such was Beren's love for Lúthien that his soul fought against nature and remained in the halls of Mandos, something a man hadn't achieved. Lúthien too was unique, for she cast off the immortality of her race and chose Beren's path. Shortly after his death, Lúthien withered until she too was overcome by its soft embrace. There, in the halls of Mandos, Lúthien attempted a thing never done before nor since. She knelt before Mandos and sang to him. The song of Lúthien was the song most fair that ever in words was woven, and the song most sorrowful that ever the world shall hear. For Lúthien wove two themes of words, of the sorrow of the Eldar and the grief of men, of the two kindreds that were made by Ilúvatar to dwell in Arda, and as she knelt before him, her tears fell upon his feet like rain upon the stones. And Mandos was moved to pity, who never before was so moved, nor has been since. Mandos recalled Beren's spirit and brought the pair before Manwë, king of the Valar, who gave Lúthien a choice. She could be released from the halls of Mandos to dwell eternally in Valimar with her kind, or she could return to Middle-earth with Beren and live as a mortal, with love but without certitude of life or joy. Again, the love between Beren and Lúthien couldn't be withstood, and she chose the second doom, for them both to be reborn as mortals and dwell in Middle-earth. So it was that the couple was destined for a second but true death, and though she has long left the world, in her choice the two kindreds have been joined, and she is the forerunner of many in whom is the likeness of Lúthien, the beloved. The couple dwelt quietly and peacefully in Osiriand on the river Adarant. There they gave birth to and raised Dior, the heir to Doriath, whose own blood and descendants propagated through the houses of Eldar and Edain for generations. Only once more did Beren take part in the happenings of the world, when he and the elves sought vengeance against the dwarves that murdered Elu Thingol and sacked Menegroth. Beren helped restore Doriath and set his son upon the throne. The quest for the Silmaril and the Lay of Luthien highlight the power of devotion in the face of despair, the victory of love and hope over hatred and loss, and the unparalleled legend of both characters. Beren was a man without peer who survived many perils and hardships. Luthien was an elf whose beauty had no equal and whose enchantment could thwart the greatest foes. Together, they were unstoppable, facing both Sauron and Morgoth, both Draugluin and Carcharoth, and proving Thingol and the sons of Feanor wrong. They did this all to preserve the deep feelings shared by perhaps the greatest couple who had ever lived. Thanks so much for watching and listening to this video on Beren, the quest for the Silmaril, and the Lay of Luthien. Let me know your thoughts on this unstoppable couple, the actions of Celegorm and Corufin, as well as suggestions for future videos in the comments below. And if you're a fan of lore and storytelling, be sure to subscribe to the channel where content is uploaded frequently. I'd like to thank my patrons over on Patreon, whose support means the world to me and helps the channel continue to improve. If you'd like to become a lore luminary for access to me, a great community, written scripts, and early video drops, head to patreon.com/thelorebrarians to learn more. Until next time, go forth and explore the lore.